So this one is slightly alarming and disappointing. There's a report from GamesIndustry.biz this week concerning year-on-year sales trends for the consoles. And yeah, I'm just going to read out a bit from the GamesIndustry.biz article. PlayStation 5 comfortably the number one console in Europe across tracked markets. UK and Germany not included. Well, that's two very big
Oh
markets
boy.
there.
Huh.
Anyway, PS5 sales up 143% over October last year, driven by the availability of stock this time around. Nintendo Switch number two, despite a 20% drop in sales compared with last October. I mean, you'd kind of expect
Yeah,
a
it's
decline, right?
end of life
Yeah.
basically.
End of life, but they've had a storming year in terms of software.
Releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that's concerning, right? Xbox Series S and X sales continue to struggle in Europe, down 52%. 52% year on year. Now, you can put this into context by saying that the general appreciation of Xbox in EU markets is significantly lower than
North America.
UK, US specifically. I mean, those are kind of more Xbox strongholds. But even so, you're comparing like with like here. And the concepts that you're moving into year three of the generation, and you're posting a 52% decline in hardware sales. I don't really know where to begin with that. John, I'm going to come to you here. Obviously, there has been a somewhat drastic changing strategy from Microsoft across this generation. They're moving away from the concept of Xbox as a box, bizarrely
That's
enough.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about it more as a platform, and they want you to be able to play Xbox, quote unquote, Xbox games on pretty much any piece of hardware. So we've got the cloud, we've got PC, and we've got consoles. Even so, though, this is alarming, right?
Yeah, I think this is a confluence of factors here. So, as you said, Europe is not the strongest market for Xbox. It has not been. And I think the thing that's happening with Xbox Series S and X comes down to basically the software available combined with the Xbox shift towards services, right? So a console tends to live and die by its big exclusive titles and the buzz around them, right? The hardcore players get excited about something, they're into that platform, they early adopt, but then the rest of the market tends to follow them traditionally, right? Like if there's excitement around the brand, the people that are perhaps less hardcore, you would say, they feel that excitement and they want to get into it. And I think that's what's happened with Switch and PlayStation 5, because I don't think Sony's done anything particularly outstanding with the PS5 this generation. They've just sort of delivered a solid platform, and it does have some exclusives that people are excited about, basically. Xbox, despite all their software development houses, I don't think they've had a very strong generation in terms of software that says you want this console. And that doesn't say that there's not amazing games for the Xbox. It's more when you look back at, say, the Xbox 360, right? I just reattached my Xbox 360 to the FW900, in fact, upstairs, and was sort of going through some of the old games, and it reminded me of what the buzz was like for the 360, the types of games Microsoft was publishing back then, in multiple types of genres. Obviously the big stuff like Gears and Halo had insane buzz, but then, there's the Mistwalker stuff like Blue Dragon Lost Odyssey and just tons of stuff. It was a very exciting time for Xbox, and they have not been able to replicate that this generation at all, in fact, and instead they are going in on these services. But that's not necessarily all bad news for them, right? Because they have clearly found their own new niche and they're trying to blaze trails in that area. And I think you can't really look at the Xbox brand as a whole and just say, oh, it's the console sales, because I don't think that's the
This
game they're
hardware.
playing
Yeah.
anymore. Which, that's the business strategy that makes sense, is to try to find new areas that aren't covered by the competition and make your own success there, which they're doing. So I basically think it's this lack of buzz, the lack of big exclusive stuff coming to the console, combined with, the history of Xbox in Europe, that it just kind of makes sense that it wouldn't have a huge impact. I would also say, even this doesn't include Germany, but even in Germany, I have noticed, I don't know how much retail sales even matter at this point, and I think they do matter to companies like Nintendo. But I have noticed in the last year that Xbox has kind of started to disappear from the shelves in Germany, where you go to like MediaMarkt, Saturn, or any other sort of chain. The Xbox sections are either disappearing or becoming smaller, like very small. And I mean, when I walked by recently and there was just like one shelf with Xbox games and then like a top 10 list up there, but the top 10 list was blank and slightly falling off the wall. I was like, this is weird.
Someone's not taking care of
so,
this. Yeah.
Whereas like the PS5 and especially the Switch section was gigantic and spilling out across there. And even the PC sections at MediaMarkt are still surprisingly large, I would say. In fact, I bought for Audi a PC boxed copy of AEW Fight Forever that they put out.
PC box copy?
Yeah, they had that.
What?
Yeah. That's when I found Psychonauts on the PC as well. They're still selling that in the stores with the soundtrack
That's
CD.
awesome, though.
Pretty nuts. But so I suspect it's all this mix of things happening, right? But as I'm insinuating, it's
Starfield's out, Forza Motorsport's out. Those were like the two key, tentpole titles for Q3/Q4.
The thing is, when I say there's not big stuff for Xbox, I just mean I'm specifically talking exclusives to push people to want to buy the hardware. Xbox doesn't really have that anymore because, and this is good actually, I would say, they have their PC push as well. You look at a game like Starfield, right? Bethesda games. Where are those games the most popular? I would say PC. They are PC games first and foremost. That obviously is useful for Xbox. It has plenty of sales on Xbox, I'm sure, but I think the driving factor there is a lot of people are going to play on PC. And that's fine. They own the company. They put that game out, right? So wherever they get the sales, they're benefiting. And that's going to be the case with a lot of this stuff. So it's not really doom and gloom in that perspective. But then there's been the state of console gaming, when you really think about it, I just can't. I mean, you were there, Rich. You remember what the Xbox 360 was like, right? Like the buzz around that thing.
Everything that could have gone Microsoft's direction, apart from the Red Ring, went in Microsoft's direction. They had a year head start. They had a cheaper console. They had a more powerful GPU, and they had momentum, right? Because that year head start gave them momentum. They had third parties lining up to support the platform with great games. And then by the time PlayStation arrived, the third parties were really sort of, getting into the swing of things, right? 2007, where, there was actually competition from Sony. All of those third party games, pretty much to a T, were all better on Xbox 360. And you had the first party stuff, which was just phenomenal. Which I still think stuff like Crackdown was just like game changing. And if you go back to that entire period, there were just incredible games. BioShock came out fairly early on in the generation. Same with Assassin's Creed. The first Assassin's Creed,
360 games, yeah.
It was actually, it was a proper event. Okay, so the game did, had some issues, but you were seeing things that you hadn't seen before on a console, and it was a phenomenal time.
Oh, there's still, Assassin's Creed was multi-platform, better on 360, but BioShock, while it did get a PS3 port, it came much, much later. So there was cases where third-party games were launching first on 360. Same with something like Mass Effect. Mass Effect came out in 2007.
My gosh.
They had Halo 3 that year. All the Bungie Halo stuff coming out. We laugh about stuff like, there's Master Chief on a Mountain Dew can, right? But like that was part of the energy that was driving it. People really knew Xbox. Literally. Like it was a big deal. And that was probably the time when Xbox had the most success in Europe, I'd say as well, right? Like it captured a decent share of the market here as well, and it was a big deal. And it's just we've lost that.
I should point out that actually in Europe, PlayStation 3 did buck the trend versus UK and US. It was a big seller in Europe, even with all of these negative factors attached to it. I mean, it's quite funny now when we whenever we go back and look at Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 software head to head. The 360 is so far ahead.
So far ahead. So far ahead.
So,
when you've got both resolution and performance improvements, that's quite a big gap.
I mean, the exceptions were pretty much stuff like Criterion Games for somehow was able to make really good versions on PS3, and then also like the
PS3 was the lead platform. Yeah,
that's true. So those were good. I guess Final Fantasy 13. But there's not that many. It's mostly 360 has the lead. I would say I'm curious what you guys think. I look at what's happened with Xbox over the last couple of decades, and I think Don Matrick's push towards Kinect and the way that they marketed through the Xbox One at launch was like the pivotal point that caused the most like damage to the brand.
Yeah.
And they've been forever trying to recover from it. I think the brand itself and the mind space around it is way better right now than it was at the time, but they squandered so much of their goodwill and like the excitement around the brand because of that one decision, which one could also lay at the feet of Nintendo. So in the end, the Wii may have damaged the Xbox.
Damaged the Xbox.
Because they, that's what Kinect was about, was an answer to the Wii, right? So
yeah,
and it sold well.
I mean, initially.
People liked. I mean, someone liked Kinect apparently. But I do find it funny.
It for the first couple of games they tried.
The dancing stuff was good on there. It was fun.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about that I think is funny about this is that Don Matrick era, that initial push, and then the marketing around it kind of killed it all. But the launch games are kind of more interesting than we got at launch on Xbox Series consoles.
I agree. I was thinking that too.
You got stuff like Killer Instinct, man. Like, that game's awesome as heck. And like the launch for the Series consoles, you had like some patches to bring up some games.
Okay, look, it's not just Killer Instinct. They also had Dead Rising 3, which, it had some technical hiccups, but it was good. They had Rise, Son of Rome, right? They had Forza Motorsport 5, which, going back to, actually, it's pretty solid. It looks amazing for that platform, and it has more personality than the most recent Forza, I would say. It's really solid in that. They had Crimson Dragon, which, not amazing, but it's kind of a spiritual follow-up to Panzer Dragoon with some of the same people involved. So It's neat that it's there. But then over time, you would get stuff like in the first 3 years of that system, we also got stuff like Halo 5, the Master Chief Collection, which, while flawed at first, was, it's still pretty cool. Sunset Overdrive was there. Gears Ultimate Edition, I guess, was there. And there's a bunch more stuff that's slipping my mind at the moment, but there was some really cool original stuff coming out. Oh, Forza Horizon 2 and then 3, I guess, also came out during that period. Like the first 3 years of Xbox One, the only reason it really kind of didn't fare as well as at the PS4, that was like Sony on fire in terms of just like putting out quality stuff with a good machine, right? Yeah. Like both of them were competing at a very high level, I would say, and both platforms were actually quite good. Xbox's problem simply stemmed from the way they initially pitched the one, following, the Kinect stuff, and then the fact that the console was seen as less powerful, which it was, versus PS4, which was really just, a weird turn for Xbox, since up to that point, the Xbox was all about being the most powerful console on the market.
What a drop.
And they got back to that, of course, but yeah, so man, it's just weird how they've really struggled to get out of the shadow of that. But, again, they found a new market with Game Pass and stuff like that. And I think they're doing fine, but it is interesting to see.
I think there's another thing. You're right about the confluence of different factors, and PlayStation's strategy has been extremely straightforward, which is to say they want to get consoles in homes, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at this 143% year-on-year increase. what have they done to do that? I mean, they've built up momentum by basically discounting the console. I mean, over the summer, I bought a PlayStation 5 for £400, massive discount. Right now,
Right.
it's you can get one for as low as £360. There's some crazy stuff going on there simply because they want to shift consoles, get consoles into homes, get people converted into PlayStation Plus subscribers, and it's basically, free. Well, I wouldn't say free revenue, but it's revenue that's accruing every month per user, basically, because you kind of need that subscription. We'll talk about subscriptions in a minute, John, because that's slightly worrying as well. But I think, basically there's momentum there with PlayStation where the strategy has been really straightforward. Discount the console, get it out there. It's only now with Black Friday that I'm actually seeing discounts on Series X, £360. Yeah, it's like, why didn't this happen
Also,
sooner?
the storage card finally is going on sale.
Yeah.
That little
storage
Seagate
card.
drive,
Jeez.
which, I needed one of those.
Did you buy one?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's like, I'm tired of running out of space on there. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
but the 1 terabyte one was like over 200 for so long, and I found one for like 129. So
It's still such a dumb price, though.
was the one or the two?
I mean,
either
this,
way,
this,
it's coming. It's in the mail.
52%, this 52% decline year on year is alarming, but you've got to kind of couch it within the overall business, right? Which
Strategy?
we just don't know. It's
Right.
just one alarming statistic.
The other thing, though, we were talking about the Xbox decline, and Sony's doing very well in the market, but I actually think PlayStation, in terms of what they release, has lost a lot of its identity. When you look back to PlayStation 1 through 3, and even 4 with its indie push, it was all about this like eclectic mix of titles. You had the big AAA stuff, but in between was all this like more smaller scale games, often pushing like wild ideas and concepts, tons of Japanese developed stuff. That's where they were so strong, and that's what made those earlier PlayStations truly great. PlayStation 5 barely has any of that. They've almost completely killed it off, and it's now just about these big tentpole releases and remasters. And that bums me out too, because it's just they've changed the way they're playing the game, and it's not necessarily what I wanted from them anymore. So
Yeah.
the state of console business is a bit not great in general, outside of, say, even though the Switch is very underpowered by today's standards, I still think Nintendo is running a tight ship over there, and they're doing they're putting out a lot of great stuff that fills many different interests.
Okay. Well, it's going to be interesting to see. Well, obviously, we've got the Game Awards happening imminently. Jeff.
Oh, yeah,
will be
the
revealing
Jeffs.
more
Oh,
games.
Jeff is going to be jeffing. Yeah.
Last year, there was basically no Microsoft presence at the awards whatsoever, apart from Phil being there physically in the audience. There wasn't really much in the way of announcements or anything, so I'll be interested to see whether they actually try to turn that around, try to drum up a bit more hype. I mean, there's stuff happening, so you'd expect things to be happening in due course. So let's find out what they are, I guess.